welcome to the First, the Last, the Nerdom. Welcome back to the First, the Last Nerdom, the podcast where we journey through worlds of wonder, from the brightest realms of fantasy to the darkest corners of cult cinema. This week, we're continuing our celebration of Fantasy Month with a film that's both infamous and beloved, Disney's 1985 animated cult classic, The Black Cauldron. Long before Disney found its Renaissance magic in the 90s, it took a bold and some would say dangerous leap into darker territory with this adaptation of Lloyd Alexander's Chronicles of Sheridan. With its moody landscapes, skeletal armies, and terrifying Horn King, The Black Cauldron was unlike anything audiences had seen from the Mouse House. Too scary for kids, too strange for adults, it sank at the box office. But over the years, it's grown into a legend of its own. This week, we're diving into its shadowy history, the animation that pushed boundaries, the eerie tone that nearly earned it a PG-13 rating, and how this forgotten Disney oddity has since become rediscovered as a true cult fantasy. Is it a flawed masterpiece, a misstep in the Disney canon, or a dark treasure waiting to be unearthed? So grab your magic sword, beware of creeping cauldrons, and try not to get lost in the swamps of Sheridan. Because Fantasy Month marches on with the Black Cauldron right here on the First, the Last, the Nerdom. Great intro,
Hey,
as usual, Tom. How you
yeah,
doing, Tom?
I'm good. I'm good. Good reading of it.
Yeah, well,
Yeah.
second take at it. Second bite at the apple.
Hey,
Here we are.
hey, you know.
Yeah. So this week we're doing obviously the Black Cauldron here, and
Mhm.
I wanted to kind of set the table. But before we do get into the main event here, we've got a little shilling to pay the bills here. As always, you can find me and Tom here on our home base, the First Last Nerdom. We're always happy to be part of this thing, and we are very grateful the last couple people who decided to subscribe, bringing us up to 440. So thank you for doing that.
Yep.
We're almost this
Yeah.
will be 280 as it goes out the door, or 279, whatever the count is. But either way, this is our home base. And Tom, I think you also do some things on another social media, something or other. What's that one all about?
The the infamous Reddit. Yeah.
Yeah.
I find various subreddits to promote our stuff on, or get a discussion going. I don't mind having a discussion and promote our stuff on. Yeah, on. I think I did thought I had found a Dark Crystal one. Maybe they removed us. I don't know. But yeah, Garth Marenghi one. Yeah, okay, there is the one.
Yeah,
Okay,
for some
there
reason
it
that
is.
it's just not showing the embedded stupid stuff.
Embedded video. But yeah, I find those, and I find the larger subreddits tend to not like us. They think we're spamming or something. But yeah, I think we've gotten quite a few views from subreddit. So if you're a Reddit person, hello, thank you for checking us out. But
Absolutely.
yeah, I'm on there as First Last Nerdom, and as long as you're not rude, I'll engage with you on there. And then I'm also on X under First Last Nerdom as well. Promotes our stuff, and sadly, one of our lolcows passed away this past week. King Cobra. So I thought I would shout him out. He will be missed. All of his strange cooking shows and
Shenanigans.
interesting, yeah, interesting drink combinations. Yep. If you have a drink this weekend, maybe do a toast to good King Cobra.
Right on, right on. Yeah, I too am also on X here. You can find me as well. Sometimes me and Tom will have a conversation. If you want to join it, you're more than welcome. At ApeIt_Ink. Also into co-host of stuff into Cafe Americana. There's a Sunday news show that I co-host with the good host Professor Kenny, as well as our standard bearer co-host who's been joining us as a guest, August special guest, Aaron Reyes. Go check us out there. It's all we had fun this morning, and of course, as always, long form content, ApeIt.Ink. But here we are to the Black Cauldron, and I I had never seen this before. I had seen clips of it, and we kind of talked, and this naturally came from when we did last week's episode with our special guest
Mm-hmm.
D,
Yep.
about fantasy and kind of some things. If you roll around in a genre in a specific time period, like say the '80s with fantasy and either animated
Mm-hmm.
or live action, you're bound to run into like one of these things. As we kind of
Mm-hmm.
have elongated our net here, and we're deciding, picking and choosing here and there. We're gonna have a very fun one next week, but for now, this week we kind of take a little bit more of we actually take a rare tumble, I would say, or stumble, whatever you want to call it, going down the path of this Disney classic, the Black Cauldron. This kind of set the table a little bit. I did a little bit more deeper research, but this was supposed to be essentially what Disney loves to have. Although back then it wasn't as widely known about as it is today, like kind of like how we all the, I guess, the Disney acolytes that praise it constantly versus the Disney, the anti-Disney kind of sentiment that's out there, or whatever. That they look for IPs, they look for franchises that they can print money off of. And most of those came from Disney themselves. Obviously, we all grew up with those. All through the '90s, where it was original Disney after original Disney after original Disney, and it wasn't just
Mm-hmm.
Sleeping Beauty that they would reanimate
Yeah.
the corpse of and re-released to the theater every 10 years or something like that. I'm kind of joking here, but which
Mm-hmm.
and don't sleep on the original Sleeping Beauty. It was a masterpiece in and of itself. So kudos where it does, but sometimes Disney takes a little bit of a goofy step when maybe they should have hopped with the other foot, or maybe they should have ran or skipped or jumped. But anyway, this one they bought the rights to this, and this was supposed to be, could have been their Lord of the Rings esque type, launching pad.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe not as big. Of course, Lord of the Rings is huge nowadays, but you got to remember back in the '80s, and this was bought in the '70s, I believe, something like that. Nobody
Yeah.
nobody knew how.
73, I think. Yep.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
yeah. Nobody knew how big
Mm-hmm.
the Lord of the Rings would
Mm-hmm.
become. Obviously, so
Mm-hmm.
it predates that, the commercial version of the Lord of the Rings and how it took off with all that, which we saw with Peter
Yeah.
Jackson. But anyway, so where do you come in on this? Is this something that you enjoyed, or that you saw as a kid, or that you or aside from just kind of came up when we were talking about different
Yeah. Yeah, I think a lot of people have warm memories of Disney during, I guess, probably during the '90s, whenever they had their um, big reemergence with all of their secondary classic cartoons or animated movies that came out, like Lion King and Beauty and the Beast and all of those. But my sweet spot for Disney is during the '80s, when they tried to do different things. They were still try to they were during the '80s. The big audience was the teenage audience, and I think this was I was reading, this is their kind of stab at maybe a more teenage audience with the Black Cauldron.
I'll
So
take
they
that one.
they
Makes
went
sense.
more, a little bit more darker. My love for Tron, and then this movie I did see in the theater. I remember seeing it, and I remember enjoying it. It hits all my sweet spots. It has kind of a horrific aspects to it with the Horn King, and then the fantasy elements. So it's just it didn't feel Disney to me. It still doesn't feel quite Disney to me. It
Hmm.
feels I don't know, just kind of it almost has Ralph Bakshi. He did the Lord of the Rings animated movie back in the '70s, or maybe it was the '80s. And actually, he was kind of asked to maybe direct this one, and he kind of declined because he has more of a adult sensibility, and he didn't think it would translate through to Disney. But yeah, I did see it in the theater, and it's one of those movies that I see and I enjoy, and then it gets leaves my mind, because when I think of Disney, it doesn't compute. So it kind of has, it seems to be on a shelf all its own
Sure.
in my head, and then it seems like an anomaly, so I forget about it. And then when I back on it again, I'd say, "Oh yeah, I really like that movie."
Yeah, absolutely.
Not to say it doesn't have its flaws, but yeah, I did quite enjoy this movie, even back then as a child.
Yeah, and this was this trying to find my plot notes here to not
Mhm.
spoil everything. You had your protagonist, which is Taran, um, yeah,
Mhm.
Taran Scary.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, and him, and he's
The
kind of like
assistant pig keeper.
right, very humble things, and you're kind of caught into this the very beginning of like, oh, well, maybe there's something a little bit special with this guy, you know, as you
Yeah.
kind of get to know it, and yes, but no, mainly no, but that's what kind of sets up the unique, as we mentioned, it was based off of Lloyd Alexander's Sheridan Tales, or that his 5 book series, which he got done in four years, I believe. Disney bought the rights to it,
Yeah.
and they kind of
Yeah.
cut up the movie, and we'll get into that a little bit, but they didn't quite go one to one. They
Mhm.
kind of
Yeah.
left the books, and they kind of pulled arguably some, maybe not some of the greatest aspects of it, and then try to make it into a movie. But this had, in a weird way, this kind of has the fingerprints of what Disney would do later on with some things, but in a more advanced
Yeah.
way, decades and
Right.
decades later. Which is to say that
Yeah.
what Disney does today is very common practice. They just might do it a little bit more than other studios, but every studio does a
Mhm.
pre-screening, and they kind of
Yeah.
A/B test it, the kind of thing. It gets more complicated from there. We're
Mhm.
not covering that per se for this one, but
Yeah.
the primary characters here are, and Period, I believe, is the Celtic or whatever word
Yeah.
for England,
It's-
like for
Yeah, it's kind of based on Welsh
right,
mythology.
right,
Yeah, and actually, weirdly enough, anytime I read about Black Cauldron, I rediscover every time that, oh yeah, it was based on these books. And I was looking as you tend to do, you look on Amazon and go, okay, well, are the books still available? And evidently, was doing a search a few years back, and I actually I don't know if my screen will show you, but I actually purchased
right on.
the book set back in 2015 for Kindle. I must have done like a search, and it must have been cheap enough. That's the cover of the collection right there. And Amazon,
Right.
if I can avoid getting
Here, let me
the
put you on
digital
my screen here
version,
so we can.
yeah. I mean, look at that. That's the cover of the collection
Yeah.
in my Kindle library. It's like, okay, a bad PNG of a picture of the collection. So yeah, I'm sure you'd probably be much better off getting the actual books. But yeah, it must have been just a couple of dollars on sale or something. That's why I got the digital version. But yeah, so I do have those. Nope.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's interesting.
it's but yeah, I purchased that back in 2015. I have no memory of that, so I do have the books, so I can read it at any time.
Right, right. Yeah, I was just how best to set it up. I mean, there's many different ways to do it, but
Hmm.
it was like I was saying, it was essentially Disney's attempt at creating their own Lord of the Rings. Like a
Hmm.
genuine quest fantasy with real stakes, real depth. Protagonist who isn't a princess or a
Hmm.
talking animal. We were
Yeah, I'll do. Yeah.
yeah, and Taryn was voiced by Grant Bardsley, who
Yeah.
is did a great job. I mean, I,
Yeah.
I did I did like this ultimately. I mean, I'm not going to bury the lead here, but um, but he's not the typical hero. He doesn't have muscles. He's kind of more like an Aladdin, I guess.
Yeah, yeah, and, he goes on this kind of epic journey to take the pig, this clairvoyant pig, and uh, there's
Psychic pig.
there's some interesting choices in this. Not your typical fantasy story, a clairvoyant pig. That wouldn't be where I would immediately start with. But yeah, he's taking this pig to safety because the pig knows where the Cauldron is, or at least his in his in her head. And so he's supposed to take this pig off to the hidden cottage, and he immediately loses the pig. Immediately, immediately.
Right, right.
He's
Like
not he's
he kind of lazy, kind of doesn't care, kind of he wants to find a shortcut, I guess. But
he's more interested in fighting the Horn King as opposed to taking care of this pig. And not that he doesn't love the pig, but yeah, he thinks he's bigger than he is. And yeah, I think it's a lot of this movie is it the themes of it are kind of buried in it. It's not quite obvious because the action goes from one thing to the next, and you never rest upon anything for very long, or stay too much on any moral conundrums in the movie, unlike a lot of Disney's things. So the growth is there, but you kind of have to squint a little bit to see it. But yeah, he goes from being this kid that's lost in his head of what he thinks a hero should be, and he finds out what a hero really is,
right.
and what they are. It's he finds it from the people around him. It helps him to discover who he is, through the various people and what they do to add to his knowledge of what a hero can be or should be.
Can be and should be, and choices made along the way too.
Hmm.
It worked out. I was gonna say I was gonna go to my preamble. I was just looking at it. Well, and John Hurt's performance as the Horn King too is it is scary. It's not even for the
Yeah, he's
era.
a
It wasn't really like you were saying, kind of like what you're saying. They were trying to essentially, again, this is like this. This is just exactly like modern Disney. They're trying for an audience that maybe they're not necessarily strong with per se, but
right.
Wallace also alienating maybe a little bit two core groups that you would have: parents and kids. Little
Mhm.
kiddos. Like
Yeah.
whereas, but still, the quality does come through, and they did really try to make this, you know, that. But you literally have the trope princess in a dungeon.
Yeah.
you know, well,
Exactly. Yeah. No,
she's
well,
captured.
it's
Excuse me, she's captured,
yeah.
but in a dungeon.
I don't.
Sorry.
I don't know, Mike. This could be maybe one of the first woke Disney movies, because she actually saves Taran from the dungeon. That woman comes in and saves him. But no, just kidding. But but no, it's no, but they do play around with that. Like I said, each character has their moment to shine, to show their strengths, which is a little different than I would say
Yeah, you're
a lot of
talking.
fantasy or Disney stuff.
Yeah, Eileen Lee, I believe that's what I try to say your name as. But like she is
Oh yeah.
she is way ahead of the curve as far as way before it was kosher. Really cool.
Mm.
She did, but Susan Sheridan, the voiced played her,
Mhm.
and they break the mold of like what a Disney princess is. Like the
Yeah.
she you're right. She is the one who rescues him, the main guy. Which kind of leads to him being kind of a little bit more bumbly than he puts on, or wants to see himself as, perhaps.
Right.
So you
Right.
do have a little bit more uh, complex characters again, which would explain why it would be geared toward um, teen audiences. Well, what they tried for anyway.
Right.
You know, it still is proto. Pretty remarkable in '85. I think this is put out.
Yeah.
Yeah, '85.
Yeah.
And
No. Yeah.
and it was, I think
And
it was
no.
done a year before this too, but they had to do some
Right.
finishing touches. But still,
Yeah.
to have something so modern in '85 was pretty. Again, you can. It's a shame that Disney doesn't go back to the vault, so to speak. And like kind of take a page from even the things that they kind of butchered a little bit, but they did get
Mhm.
right. So it's just very interesting. But she's got powers too. But she's not like was perfectly born that way. Like if this were modern made, it would have been. But she still has a larger than life personality, just like other Disney heroines, like Ariel and
Yeah.
Belle. She kind of reminded me a little bit combined, but she had, but she was still a princess, so it was anyway.
Yeah, yeah, and if and unfortunately, neither Mike nor I are like big Disney heads. We don't know all the history of the studios and the animated struggles that they had.
Very
I
much
know this is
amateurs
the
that enjoy what we see with our own two eyes.
absolutely. So, but I did read it up a little bit about it, and the I know this was the last movie that was done in I think the original animated studios or the classic one, and there was a bit of a rift between the newer animators and the older Disney animators that had been there forever. There was I guess a conflict and ideology about what a animated movie should and could be, and there was that kind of riff. So this was maybe like the last one to do um try to do the classic animation, but was also trying to do new things. And Tim Burton actually worked on it a little bit, and I was reading that he had done sort of like these creatures that the Horn King had that were almost Tugger like. That would have probably not played well with the kiddos back in the day, but would have been interesting to see. But yeah, and this is the first one that used computer graphics in it. I know it was the first one that was released with it. I think the Rescuers or another one had CGI,
Right.
but this one was the first one that was filmed with it. So I'm sure there's if we'd had some one of the Disney heads here, they could inform us a lot more on what was going on. But that whole kind of struggle there sounds like it would be interesting to kind of dig in deeper on.
Yeah, the I was gonna say to the then and again, this was like an attempt to make from the books these two characters
Mhm.
essentially end up being the end state that you have from the books, but what you get on the screen though, well, much more truncated version of that. But I mean, it still works as a movie, I suppose. Um,
Yeah, it does
but
feel a little rushed, but
it does.
like I said,
What
but uh,
actually the first half of the movie I was fine with, but then
yeah,
like where you get toward the second half and you have the battle.
mhm,
Apparently, it was a lot more violent than it had a lot
you're
more
right. Yeah,
scenes there that would cause it to be PG-13 or actually rated R in certain, not in the United States
yep,
per se, but like in yeah,
yep.
please do.
Good man. Crack open the boomer juice.
Easily could have earned itself a rated R in like the UK. Like so,
Hmm.
take that with a grain of salt for United States, but there was a lot more there that was catered to a more maturing, I should say.
Mature, yeah.
Yeah, maturing audience, as it were. And I,
Yeah, and
oh, go ahead.
this movie, I guess it was done sort of like in the animation style of Sleeping Beauty, is from what I read. That was kind of what they were going
That's
for.
right. Yeah,
It,
and it
you know,
shows in the
mhm,
color palette, I would say.
mhm. Yeah, and the design of the characters kind of have that Sleeping Beauty esque look to them. Although the princess sort of like has a kind of a look, her looks kind of is a mix between Sleeping Beauty and I say her outfit almost kind of look like Snow White as well. But yeah, the whole aesthetic was I enjoyed. It like I said, it doesn't look completely like Disney. It has sort of a Don Bluth almost kind of look to it as well. But yeah, and also at times it reminded me of I'm the video game guy, Dragon Slayer. The old game. Yeah, choose your way through there, adventure one. But yeah, it like I said, I've always I love the look of it. Like in it's based off of two books, so yeah, that's sort of if it seems like it's crammed with ideas, that's because it probably is. Although the Lloyd Alexander, they did ask him what he thought of the movie, and he said that he enjoyed the movie.
Mm.
It's really isn't um the final movie, it doesn't really resemble his books very much, and that but in that he enjoyed the movie, and he hoped that if you saw the movie and enjoyed the movie, that you would go further and read his books to find out what the books were all about as well.
Yeah, absolutely. This kind of reminded me of like if Warner Brothers had bought the rights to Harry Potter, like when they were first published, and could see the
Yeah.
potential for them, and for whatever reason it didn't get kickstarted, like how we have Harry Potter. Very,
Hmm.
very similar, but way different, and what became. I appreciate him, the original author, because he can appreciate the movie. It's just this
That's
is a
what it
very
was.
different
Yeah.
adaptation of his work, and he didn't take
Yeah.
offense to that. Which I think
Yeah.
is very forgiving that you probably might not see nowadays. Where
Right. Yeah.
you could see like where there might be
Hmm.
some real bitter animus, against like if
Hmm.
imagine J.K. Rowling
Yeah.
not being a household name now.
Yeah.
If just kind of
Exactly.
a modern spin, but you could it does probably the younger kid in me, it probably would have not given this too much time, but
Hmm.
the older me, adult 20s, 30s, 40s, I probably would have absolutely watched this just from
Hmm.
the weight of nostalgia in the
Yeah.
80s.
Yeah.
And I remember seeing parts of this, but I never really
Hmm.
watched all the way.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, and I think yeah, I saw it as a young teenager, and I think that's sort of like maybe the perfect audience for that, because you still appreciate the comedic, childish aspects of it, but also you're ready for the darker aspects. It really felt like it was kind of edgy at the time, with the Horned King being the skeletal horned creature. Really, the whole dungeon castle part of it just had that menace that I kind of soaked up and enjoyed. And this is like I said, didn't feel like a Disney movie. I had a animosity to Disney from the start. My first exposure really to a Disney movie was Pete's Dragon, and that was I had to go see that instead of Star Wars, because I was begging my mom to go see Star Wars, and we finally went to the theater to see it, and it was gone, and we got stuck watching Pete's Dragon. So I always had this animosity to Disney,
right.
and so yeah, the only Disney things that I liked was the stuff that was different than Disney, its original stuff. But yeah, this is the first movie, well, Disney animated movie that really didn't have any songs in it either. It wasn't a musical,
No.
which I never really liked about Disney movies either. So that was much appreciated in this as a young teenager as well. But yeah, it just kind of tickled all of my stuff that I like. At the time I was getting into fantasy, and I always loved Star Wars, and you had a glowing sword in it that was a reminiscent of a lightsaber. What's not to love about that? But yeah, I kind as an adult, I can see the kind of rougher edges where they were trying to, maybe their ambition was a little bit higher than what they could do in an hour and 20 minutes.
Yeah. Yeah, well, unfortunately, this kind of goes back to the original version that I mentioned before, that was more graphic. I believe it also had where the cauldron, literally the cauldron born.
Mhm.
They melted the skin out the people's skin off their
Yeah.
bodies, and it left, but not, and then there was like at least one scene I read that where there was somebody's throat that was slashed with a sword, and
Hmm.
this is the problem with Disney, right? So, or not a problem, I guess, a feature or a bug, depending upon who you are. They go in for, and they embrace the PG rating, right, for
Hmm.
marketing, but it wasn't quite enough.
Hmm.
PG-13 probably would have broke the bank if you're Disney, obviously, but had they been able to go to that mid grade,
Hmm.
not quite R, but definitely they would have been able to do it nowadays with the marketing and how mature their stable of things are, and all the lessons learned. But they definitely learned some lessons from this one. But
Yeah. Yeah.
it does have
Yeah, and
its
it
own
would.
its own kind of air of welcoming in. But anyway, go on.
Yeah,
Sorry.
yeah, and I was going to say, yeah, yeah, I think the newly put in studio chairman Jeffrey Katzenberg was kind of aghast at the what the original cut of the movie was, and he wanted it shorter for a more child friendly movie, and wanted to cut out the darker aspects of it. And so I think I was reading where Jeffrey Katzenberg he actually brought a cut to the of the film into the edit bay and was trying to edit it himself, and he was very upset with it. But yeah, they should, Disney's going to be Disney, whatever. But it would be wonderful, and if it was with another studio, I think we'd already have got like the original cut of the movie in a very deluxe, maybe Blu-ray or 4K deluxe set. But Disney hates physical media, and probably doesn't want a darker version of this movie out there. So we'll probably never see the original cut of this movie, but I would love to see it. The movie's currently at 120 or an hour and 20 minutes, and there's like a 12 minutes that were cut from it. It would be wonderful to be able to see it in all its glory, but it is what it is.
Well, I was going to ask you, sorry, I had my question lined up here. Sorry, uh, pardon me, I lost my train of thought here. Sorry.
Oh, no worries. I I was going to mention, we'll circle back to your point, but yeah, the acting, I wanted to point out. Oh, did you find it?
Yeah, I did. Yeah, sorry. Yeah. So,
Go ahead.
in your opinion, so to you, does it seem like Disney does it seem to you like they Disney try to do a little bit more than they were capable of, or do you think that it is a flawed masterpiece? I guess would be my question to you for this, because you can kind of put, I don't know, what do you think? Sorry, that's what I wanted to ask you for.
Yeah, I think it was, they were trying to do something unique and original with this. I think the people that were behind it, if you look, the uh the people that wrote the script, I think there wasn't like a written by, it was story by, and there's like seven people, and that always causes a script to be a little bit more of a mess than it should be. When you have a singular vision, it seems like it swapped of directors quite often, producers, that went from writing hand to writing hand. Again, there was a mixed bag as far as the animation. You had the conflict between the old and the new. So I think if they had more of a showrunner, as we know it today, more of a person that steered the ship a little bit more, and was able to push forward a very clear vision that this movie should have had, I think it would have been a much stronger movie. But I think it's interesting for what it is. And to also circle back to what you were talking about with Legend, I was reading where this movie was also very influential to the guy who created Legend of Zelda, or at least it's rumored that the look of it had a big influence on Zelda and how that looks. So it's kind of interesting that we covered both movies this month in our fantasy, and both have ties to that classic video game. But evidently, I guess it may have been a little bit bigger in Japan than it was in the United States, which was, it was a huge flop and almost killed the animated animation studio
Yeah, this was
back in the day.
yeah, this was it 44 million, that was that
Yeah,
this
the
thing
cost.
had.
Yeah.
and
Hmm.
and and that was in 1985. That was before billion-dollar Disney.
Yeah,
This was the
absolutely.
Disney that literally made its bread and butter if their movies were not doing so great, or maybe they're not so hot on tour season. Like
Yeah,
literally, like that was the bread and
yeah.
butter, one of many revenue streams that Disney had,
Hmm.
proto Disney had.
Yes.
But still,
So this one,
yeah.
yeah, this one cost, yeah, 41 million, and
Oh,
it
41
only
million.
made,
Sorry. Yeah.
or maybe it's 44. But yeah, it only made like 21 million or something.
Right.
So yeah, it barely, made half of it back. But yeah, and then at the same time, that same year, the Care Bear movie came out, which only cost like 2 million to make, and it made 20 million. And so it just kind of showed, it showed you, maybe it showed maybe a bad a bad thing where you could cheap out on the animation, but still make quite a bit of money.
Well, and you had mentioned it too, but I wanted to retouch on it too. You're kind of bringing it at the table for like what we're talking about. Um, this was year zero for Michael Eisner and Jeffrey Katzenberg. They were taking over Disney,
Mhm.
and they were inheriting somebody else's vision.
Yeah.
So it was still on
Yeah, and
their.
a lot of times
Yeah.
when a new regime takes over a studio, as we've learned in our discussion of other movies, as soon as a new a new boss steps in, the old stuff just gets kind of thrown to the side. So this movie probably never really had a chance to begin with.
Yeah, and we are not Disney experts or whatever, but you also kind of
Hmm.
like the year before this, when it was really supposed to had come in and be released, you had Ron Miller, who was Walt Disney's son-in-law. He was that this was his pet project. He was championing that. He gets tossed to the side. Michael Eisner and Katzenberg, they come in and they took one look at this thing and you, what the hell is this thing?
Yeah.
you know, but
Mothers are taking and fleeing their kids from the test screening. What are we releasing here?
yeah, and unfortunately, maybe you had a sacrifice better version, like you were mentioning that it was shot longer, was shot a little deeper,
Mhm.
it rolled a little
Yeah,
bit
a
more into
little
that.
darker. Yeah.
Yeah, a little bit darker, a little bit more for that tone. Very brave, and it did not suffer from quality. It did have good standard Disney quality. That animation, that excellence that they brought to it. So it was not horrible on any of these fronts. It just
Yep.
it landed at a time like where it originally had it landed when it did, it probably would have been bigger, maybe.
Yep.
But the version that we got was that their compromises were made. So you know,
Yep. Oh, and I've been kind of saving this, but I want to talk about Gurgi, the little furry creature in this movie. Originally, they tried casting, auditioned Gary Berghoff from MASH. He played Radar. Evidently,
I
he auditioned for 3 hours, and they he tried out different vocal styles, and it just wasn't working. And they read where he refused to leave the studio, and they actually threw him out.
yeah
Because that is kind of an interesting story there. but but they ended up getting what was his name, John Biner to play
yeah Biner
Gurgi.
yeah Biner
and
yeah
and I didn't see any references, but oh, the immediate thing I felt when I was watching the Gurgi performance is how could Peter Jackson and the guy who played Gollum, how did they, they took a lot of inspiration for Gollum from Gurgi.
right
I mean, his crunchies and munchies, and he must have his crunchies and munchies and master, and all of that stuff is like baked into this character. I mean, this is maybe they were influenced by the original Lord of the Rings books with Gurgi as well with the Gollum, but maybe there's kind of a back and forth. But yeah, there's a lot of Lord of the Rings elements in this movie as well, like when they're up. It's almost like Gurgies are like the redemption of Gollum. He's like the good Gollum, the nice Gollum that goes from maybe kind of looking out for number one, and he learns what friendship is, and there him and be a little spoilery. Paran and Gurgi's up at the top there above the cauldron,
right
much like the Frodo and Gollum at the top of Mordor with the ring, looking maybe not to sacrifice the ring, but sacrifice one of themselves to go into the Black Cauldron. And yeah, there's a lot of Lord of the Rings vibes, and also when the
Skeletons
the the
too
Horde
even
King
right
Yeah, the Horn King raises up his undead army. That's a little bit of a darker slant on the kind of reminiscent of Aragon bringing forth his army of the undead.
Right, right.
A lot of interesting sort of the parallels, and obviously fantasy deals with a lot of the same kind of trope, tropes and themes, but yeah, there's very uh, I don't know. The Gurgi, definitely the DNA of Gurgi is there in Gollum, I think.
No, I agree with that completely.
What's
Yeah, that's what I had
yeah.
read too. Like I was saying, you ended up with this compromise thing that satisfied nobody and really didn't hit the target audience like they wanted to. Um, did a little bit better in Europe because they, I think, were a little bit more open to that kind of
Hmm.
style, I guess. Whereas Americans were like,
Yeah.
"This isn't like Snow White." like,
Yeah,
like,
yeah. There's a American bias at the time, and it stayed with us forever, that animated movies were for children. That you if you try to do something a little bit more adult with cartoons, what's wrong with you? This is for children. And I was, at that time, I was the forebearer. I was into the anime and was getting into Akira, and wanted to get it. I wanted my animated stuff to be a little bit more adult. So this movie kind of satisfied that a little bit. And again, yeah, it's flawed. It doesn't tell a complete satisfying story, but all of the DNA for what comes after was kind of baked into this, and I can't help but think it inspired different people to develop their fantasy ideas for film. And it is, it's definitely has its place in filmic history for fantasy films.
yeah, I was gonna say, it did also end, Disney company's willingness to experiment with more mature content
Yeah.
for quite a long
Yep. Yep.
time. Um,
Right.
and it again it scared them away for a whole generation. So that is, but
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
but there, I guess the good on Disney, I guess, for willing to put its money where its mouth is, and occasionally you
Mhm.
kind of see these things that they make, um, and it gives you a little bit melancholy, like what could have been, I guess.
Right.
Um,
Absolutely. Yeah.
so,
There's that.
and
Yeah.
one that kind of comes to mind, not necessarily with this per se with me, because fantasy is not my first genre of choice. Doesn't mean I don't love it or I can't enjoy it. It's just like, science
Yeah.
fiction is the ball
Hmm.
that I take to the bell, to the
Hmm.
ball,
Yeah.
or the bell to the ball. But um, you had that with like the creator, which was one that we covered about a year and a half ago, 2 years ago, or something like that. Like where big budget.
Hmm.
I mean, for what it was though, it was actually kind of cheap. For
Hmm.
what these things usually are
Yeah.
from
What it?
Disney,
Yeah.
which is like quarter of a billion, $500 million. No, blink of an eye, no big deal. But you
Hmm.
had such an original kind of thing, like that you keep an eye out for, and you hope, or for that matter, I don't want to. This is not going to ingratiate me to anybody on the modern platform that is Star Wars or whatever, but you know, I really enjoyed Solo. Unfortunately, Solo was not very well received, but
Hmm.
if you kind of extrapolate what you would have got potentially, which would have been an origin story, long form, full feature length film on these different characters, that could have been a very comfortable road or sidewalk to walk down as a soothing pacifier. Meanwhile, Disney transitions itself to the new version of Star Wars, which
Hmm.
probably would have. Unfortunately,
Yeah.
that was not meaning a non-Skywalker version of Star Wars, which they just quite couldn't clear. They still haven't landed. They have in some parts, but
Hmm.
they haven't in others. But anyway, um,
Yeah.
I really
Yeah.
did enjoy
And
this one. Like
yeah. Night.
that question of that world building is what I'm always after. Anyway, I'll say this and I'll
Yeah.
hand it back off to you. Like, what could have been?
Yeah.
Kind of sums
Right.
it up.
Absolutely. And to kind of go back to what could have been, what can be, um, I know the Disney has rebought the rights to this book series. I think at the end of towards the end of 2010s, I think it was 2018 or something, 16, 18, something like that. They did buy the rights again to the books with that. Yeah, 2016 they re acquired the rights to it. I would I don't that it probably won't get brought back. I would love to see this as a, they're probably thinking of it as maybe adapting the books as a maybe a TV series, but I think with the lack of success with Willow, I think they probably aren't going to
Mm,
go for
right.
a fantasy series anytime soon. So
Mm,
I think that probably killed the possibility for a Black Cauldron series. However, if people out there know anything about that and want to put their
please
two
chime in.
cents in, and yeah, please chime in on that. But yeah, I would love to see a an adaptation. I don't know if Disney has it in them to do it properly, but yeah, and I'm also, very tempted to. I don't know if I'll find the time, but I would love to read the original 5 book series that I've got, on my
Okay.
Kindle, to take a look. And I was kind of looking through it, and in the book, Taryn is pig, an assistant pig keeper, and Hinwin is a clairvoyant pig in the book, so that's definitely comes from the book. And I know that I think they combine some of the characters. I know Gurgi is I kind of read that he's more of a kind of a beast like character, good beast like character.
Right.
And there's the bard is definitely in it. I think all the characters are in it, but I guess what happens is quite a bit different. Which if you're going to cram 2 books into a movie, especially an hour and 20-minute movie, you're not going to get everything the way it was in the book, unfortunately. And at the time, the idea of a 3-part movie series like Star Wars was kind of an anomaly. You
Just
didn't have like a series of movies, you
very
know.
early days, because you also had
Hmm.
very, very slow creepings with Indiana Jones 2 that was coming up.
Hmm.
But I just want to echo though, fantasy franchises are they are money makers when they're done right.
You're right,
But
absolutely.
and I think, and I'll give credit where due. I think the Disney that was back at this stage of the game was a lot more risk averse than the current one that we have today. Because
Right.
the one today is padded with money. They can make all
Hmm.
kinds of mistakes until they kind of find their footing, and it catches and it goes on. But yeah, you're right. You're 100% right with Willow. Unfortunately, something like that, live action, and also to be fair, their live action efforts are more on classic Disney properties that they still want to bring to the big screen.
Yeah.
To
Yeah.
varying
No.
levels of, like, it is telling when you have Snow White, um, an anchor
Yeah.
that should make
Yeah.
has always made. I kind of alluded to it, like Disney would always re-release Snow White from the 50s, every 10 years, every generation or half generation or so, to
Yeah.
make money, and the fact that you can't even make money off of that, like in your modern, however,
Yeah.
you're kind
Yeah.
of
No.
upside down and turned around, and one thing is for sure, Disney's always they have been turned upside down and around, but they'll
Hmm.
usually come back,
Yep.
hopefully.
Yeah. Yeah, and with Willow, that whole TV series was an abomination to begin with. They took a promising story and
Right.
just it was a big mess. Anything that a cover of a Metallica song this should nowhere near come near a Willow series, and this is one of the missteps of that whole series. I never made it through the whole season of that.
You
But
made it to
yeah,
the
I know
ending.
it's
Like
kind of, yeah,
I
it
think we were
disappeared.
supposed to do, like, up to 3 episodes.
Yeah.
I think we only ended up doing talking about the one because
No,
it was what it was.
no, we didn't get into it.
Yeah.
We covered the movie first, and we're gonna
Oh, that's
gonna
right.
maybe do the
That's right.
series.
You're right.
But yeah,
You're
and
right.
then that never happened.
Yeah.
But
We
yeah,
met
no,
like an
no,
idiot.
yeah. So yeah, the lesson that Disney should have taken from Willow is that if you handle property badly. It's going to do badly, as opposed to, oh well, no one wants to, have fantasy now. So yeah, so that's probably what they'll take from it and not do Black Cauldron. But Black Cauldron could be their second chance, and they handled it properly. It could be like a big thing, but no, I don't think it's going to happen. But yeah. I do. I wish Black Cauldron had done a lot better. I would have loved to have a Gurgi plushie. It'd be nice to have. But yeah, that's one of those things where Disney hasn't completely shunned it, but they haven't really done anything well with it. But I will say this: I love things that shoot for the stars that maybe aren't quite as polished as other things. I love the movies are kind of punk rock that maybe don't have the talent or the the wherewithal to the money to or whatever to get the thing done, but there's the spirit, this undying spirit to it that gets it done. I take anything with it's kind of an unpolished gem as opposed to a completely varnished and polished gem that kind of loses all of its unique aspects. I don't care for like the polished and mass produced products that
Mhm.
say Disney produces as far as entertainment. I like the oddball thing that
Right.
shouldn't happen, that couldn't happen but did happen. And I love those little weird gems that come out of the film world. And this is definitely one of those. And again, it's one of those that really shouldn't have happened, that did happen, and I always forget that it's there. And then when I do, it's almost like rediscovering something, maybe a forgotten dream, and it's always fun to revisit this thing.
Well,
But yeah.
and I really want to, because when we try to do this nerddom thing, we yes, we will be real and we will give a very solid opinion, and sometimes that might be overly negative, and that's fine too. But
Hmm.
to be fair with this, it is a film that dared to be different. Even though
Hmm.
it failed commercially, it was still something unique that was created that's outlasted dozens of other successful Disney movies. So that's why I like to try to think of this as not their biggest failure per se, but
Hmm.
more of in line with them experimenting, and it's very bold.
Hmm.
It just unfortunately, you know, it didn't quite catch on,
Yeah.
and they retreated at the first time, first hint of
Yeah.
with, but you know, it still is a fascinating case study in corporate risk
Mhm.
management from one
Yeah.
point of view.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, it's interesting that they haven't tried to do anything more with
right.
Black
Ver,
Cauldron because much
versus the
like
artistic
yeah.
ambition,
Yeah.
which yeah.
Mhm. Because yeah, because a similar thing that happened during the 80s was Tron, their live action movie that in October they're trying for another big Tron release with Tron Ares, which I'm actually looking quite forward to.
I
But
am too. I am too. I'm really happy that we can, because I believe we even talked about that in the future, and like in wanting to see something, because the Tron legacy that's out there, or the Tron films that are out there are perfectly fine. I mean,
mhm.
yeah, okay, well, go see our other shows, and maybe you'll see that in the show notes here when we update it. But yeah, I am looking
Yep,
forward to
yep,
it too. So you could probably count on us covering it, hopefully.
yep. But yeah, yeah, it's I think we both agree that it's thumbs up for this movie. Uh, obviously not the best movie in the world, but a lot of it has a distinct look to it. There's a lot of interesting characters. I know there's a cult following, so if one of you people out there saw this on YouTube and wanted to check it out because you're a huge fan, definitely let us know your history with this movie. And if you have any interesting facts about this that maybe we didn't cover, definitely put it in the comments down below. We would love to read that. We'd love to have interactions with our audience. However small it is, we like like you guys out there, guys and gals out there.
Absolutely, yeah. We appreciate. Yeah, this one is a good, fun favorite. Quick add
Uh-huh.
to the nostalgia loop, and it can
Hmm.
be its own thing. And
Yep.
like I say, I really liked Creator, and I really like Disney, and I like the idea of them being very successful. And because if they're successful, then we'll get good things. So this is like one of those
Yep.
things like where okay, we're probably a few years away from them getting their mojo back, but you never know. And it's good to see them try. So I just wish they would,
Yep.
kind of.
And speaking of trying, I wish they would try harder with their physical media. I know that there was they did a 4K transfer for this movie for their Disney Plus. I read where they released it on Blu-ray just on their little mail order physical media thing of their store. I forget what it is, their club, Disney Club thing. So come on, guys, release it on physical media, a nice 4K. I would definitely have had it. I've been showing it off here, but yeah, unfortunately, I don't have that. I would love to have a physical copy of this movie, but yeah, come on, Disney, stop sleeping. Get on the physical media wagon. It's 2025. We need physical media
Yeah,
back.
and if there was a key port or thing to home in on, I just wanted to say again that this was Disney admitting that they had created something too intense for their core demographic, which should have been a massive red flag for everyone involved. But we got what we got. So yeah, go
Yep.
check it out. Go see it, and like Tom said, we'll be back at you pretty soon with more good stuff. Anything else, my
Yep.
friend? You want to have the last word or?
Yeah, we're gonna go off and get our crunchies and munchies, maybe an
Yeah.
apple.
That's right. Yeah. Fleur de
Yep.
Fleur flam.
Exactly. I'm Tom. Later.